He had 30 seconds left to live. He spent 20 of them trying to tell us the name of the island. The man they pulled from the water had no ship, no crew, no reason to be alive 40 miles from the nearest coast. He had one thing, a compass, and it was pointing south. Every compass on that ship was pointing north. He grabbed the captain's collar. Fog poured from his mouth like smoke from a spent cannon. He said 3 words, and then he was gone. The captain never repeated those 3 words, not once, not even at the end, but he kept the compass. They called it Isla Ninguna, the island of none. Not on any chart, any ledger, any naval record. 14 ships had sailed toward the coordinates in the last 60 years. Not one came back, but not one sank either. No wreckage, no bodies, no distress flags. They simply ceased. The prize they were chasing was not gold. It was a key, forged according to the dead man's encoded journal from the iron of a meteorite. The key to a vault beneath the island that supposedly held something the British Crown had spent 40 years pretending didn't exist. The first mate read the journal twice and said nothing. Then she burned page 7. She never explained why. The captain never asked. Both of them were lying. The captain needed 3 things: a ship fast enough to outrun the Navy, a crew insane enough to follow him toward an island no one returned from, and someone who knew the way. He found the first 2 easily. The third was a problem. The navigator found them. He was sitting in the tavern when they arrived, at their usual table, drinking their usual rum. He had ordered for all 5 of them. He had never met any of them before in his life. He said only, "The island is already expecting you." The polite thing would be not to disappoint it. Then he unrolled a chart that showed a route none of them had ever seen, to coordinates that should have been open ocean. And in the center of that ocean, drawn in a hand that looked centuries old, was a landmass that had no name. The rival leaned over the chart and smiled. It was the wrong kind of smile. The dead man's compass didn't just point south. At night, only at night, it pulsed, not vibrated, pulsed, like a heartbeat, like something breathing under the needle. The navigator said this was normal. He said it in the tone of a man describing rain. The first real clue was not on the chart. It was in the compass itself, etched inside the lid in letters so small you needed a magnifying glass and a reason to look. Return what was left behind, or it will take something of equal weight. The captain read it and went very still. The first mate, who was watching his face and not the compass, went still for a completely different reason. She had seen that expression exactly once before, on an island he refused to name, 7 years ago, when he'd sailed away without looking back. The pursuer's ship appeared on the horizon at dusk. He was not surprised to see them. He had been following this route for weeks. 3 days from the coordinates, the ocean changed. Not the weather, not the wind, the color. It went from blue-gray to a shade that had no name, something between green and black, like the underside of a thunderhead. The fish were gone. The birds were gone. Even the sound of the water was wrong, too flat, too close, as if they were sailing inside something rather than across it. The navigator stood at the bow and breathed in through his nose, like a man recognizing a smell he'd hoped to forget. The rival came to the captain with an offer, half his personal treasury, his ship, his crew, in exchange for being put ashore before they reached the island. The captain laughed. It was the worst thing the rival had ever heard, not because it was cruel, but because it meant the captain was more afraid than he was pretending. That night, a longboat appeared alongside them. No oars moving, no one aboard. It matched their speed exactly. On the bench, a lantern still lit. The first mate found it.
She always found things. That was the arrangement. She found things and the captain decided whether they needed to know them. This time she didn't tell him. The navigator's chart, the one he'd unrolled in the tavern, it was not drawn by him. On the reverse side, pressed flat so it couldn't be seen without removing the entire chart from its case, was a name, a naval commission, a date. The pursuer's name, 15 years old, signed by the Admiralty. The navigator had been planted, not by the Navy, by someone above the Navy. Someone who needed this crew, this captain, to go to this island at this exact moment. And the navigator had been waiting in that tavern with that rum at that table, not for weeks, for years. "How long have you known?" the first mate asked him. He smiled. He said, "Whispers. I was there when the captain left the island the first time. I was the one he left behind."
The captain confronted the navigator at gunpoint, on deck, in front of the crew. The wrong approach, he knew it before he finished speaking, because the rival had heard everything through the cabin wall, and the rival had made a calculation. He threw the captain's pistol overboard before the captain had drawn it. He'd had a man positioned for 20 minutes. The entire confrontation had been staged, not by the navigator, not by the pursuer, but by the rival, who had wanted this exact moment. The captain disarmed, the crew watching, the navigator's confession still hanging in the salt air. "You abandoned him," the rival said, quiet, precise, like a man pressing a bruise. "You abandoned your own navigator on that island and sailed away without a word. 14 years, and you never went back." The captain said nothing. The first mate stepped between them. She had a knife. She wasn't pointing it at anyone, yet. Then the island appeared on the horizon, and every argument stopped. It was beautiful. That was the first terrible thing about it. White sand the color of old bone, trees that moved without wind, a coastline so perfectly curved it looked designed, not eroded, not natural, but arranged. And above the tree line, half hidden in permanent mist, something tall and dark that was not a mountain and not a structure, but was definitely neither. The navigator stood at the bow and wept. Not from fear. The first mate recognized the expression from the one time she'd watched a man come home after being told he couldn't. The compasses on every ship, their ship, the pursuer's frigate now alongside them, every instrument snapped simultaneously to point directly at the island's center. One coordinated movement, like a salute. On the beach, exactly where they would land, there was a fire, already burning. Someone had known exactly when they were coming. And the footprints around the fire, the sand showed them clearly, led into the island, not out. There were no footprints returning to the water. They went ashore, all 5 of them. The pursuer came too. Nobody invited him and nobody stopped him, which told the captain something he didn't want to know about how trapped they already were. 30 yards in, they found the first ship. Not wreckage, the ship. Whole, upright, landlocked, half consumed by the jungle, vines through the gun ports, trees growing from the hold, 50 years old at minimum. The name on the stern was still legible. It was the first ship ever reported missing at these coordinates, the one that started the legend. Inside, on the captain's table, was a journal. Fresh ink, current date. The handwriting belonged to a man who died 43 years ago. The navigator read 3 lines and closed it. He said, "Don't." He said it to everyone. He said it looking at the captain. Then they heard footsteps inside the ship. Above them, on a deck they confirmed was empty. The footsteps were the crew, the original crew, 14 ships worth of them. Not ghosts, not dead, staying. They had found the vault. Every single crew that had come to this island had found the vault.
And every single one of them, upon opening it, had made the same decision, without communication, without conspiracy, simply by looking at what was inside. They had chosen to stay. The vault didn't contain gold. It didn't contain a weapon. It contained a map, a complete, perfect, exact map of everything. Every island, every coast, every sea lane, every reef, every wreck, every secret held by every ocean on Earth. And one more thing, the location of every person you had ever lost. Every sailor drowned, every crew abandoned, every person left behind on an island. The captain looked at the pursuer. The pursuer looked back. The navigator placed his hand on the captain's arm. "She's on the map," he said quietly. "She's been on the map for 14 years. The question was never whether to go back. The question was whether any of them deserved to."
3 of them wanted to stay. The rival said yes before the question was finished. He had nothing worth returning to and had known it since the tavern. 2 of the 14 original crews came forward to confirm there was food, water, purpose. The island provided. The island had always provided. The captain said no. Not because he didn't want to, because the woman on the map was alive and waiting, and he had spent 14 years not going back. And if he stopped now on an island again, it would be the same choice twice, and he would not survive being that man a second time. The first mate followed him without being asked. The navigator did not. He stood at the tree line as they walked back to the shore. He looked at the captain the way a man looks at a debt finally settled, not with warmth, not with anger, with finality. "She'll know you're coming," he said. "I'll make sure of it." They didn't ask how. They didn't ask what he meant. They simply walked into the water, and behind them, the jungle closed. The pursuer caught them at the longboat, not to arrest them, to help push it off the sand. The captain had his pistol up before his brain caught up to his hands. The pursuer looked at it the way a man looks at a door he's been waiting to walk through. "My brother sent me," the pursuer said. He meant the rival. Half-brother, different mothers, same impossible father. "He's been on your ship for 3 voyages. He's been my intelligence. That's why I was always one step behind you. I wasn't hunting you. I was making sure you survived long enough to find the island." The captain lowered the pistol, not from trust, because he suddenly understood why the pursuer had been the one thing in his life that never quite managed to catch him. "Your brother stayed," the captain said. "I know." A silence in which the whole chase was rewritten. Every pursuit, every narrow escape, every time the pursuer had been almost close enough. "If I let you go, you'll find her." "Yes." "Then go." "Then I have a vault to study." 3 miles out, the fog closed behind them like a curtain. The island was gone. The pursuer's frigate was gone. The rival, his 3 voyages of loyalty and subterfuge, was gone. The first mate took the tiller. The captain sat in the bow and stared at the compass, still pointing south, still pulsing. "You left her there," the first mate said. Not an accusation, a fact she'd been holding for years, waiting to put down somewhere safe. "After the wreck, the island with the black palms, you were the only one who could navigate back, and you chose not to." The captain said nothing for a very long time. "I was afraid she'd blame me," he finally said. "I was afraid she'd look at me the way I look at myself." The first mate said nothing. Sometimes that is the only merciful response. The compass pulse quickened, like a recognition, like something at the other end of the needle felt the confession and pulled harder. The captain took the tiller. "Tell me I can still fix it." The first mate looked at him. Then she said, "I've been waiting 14 years to hear you ask." They didn't expect the ship. Not their ship. It had been taken. 3 hours while they were ashore, a crew they hadn't seen fly in colors that belonged to no nation. Mercenaries, hired by someone who knew about the vault and had a very specific interest in ensuring no one left the island with information. the longboat against a full brigantine, 2 people against 30, a compass that pointed south, and a knife the first mate had been holding since Chapter 7. The captain did the math in about 4 seconds. Then he rammed the longboat directly into the brigantine's broadside at full sail. He was not aiming for the hull. He was aiming for their gunpowder cache, which he'd identified when the ship had been alongside them the previous morning, and which he'd said nothing about because he hadn't needed the information yet. The explosion was, in the first mate's later account, excessive in the best possible way. They survived because of the compass. It pulled them south through the burning debris field, through smoke and wreckage and the screaming of a dying ship, until the water cleared and the stars reappeared, and something on the horizon, far south, caught the last of the light. They found her. We'll skip the details of that. Some things don't survive being described. The captain's face when he saw her is the kind of image you keep for yourself. She was alive. She had been alive the whole time. She had, in fact, built a rather impressive settlement on the island with the black palms, had established trade with 2 neighbouring islands, and had several opinions about the captain's navigation choices that she delivered at considerable length. The reunion was both more complicated and more perfect than he deserved. The compass stopped pulsing the moment they made landfall. Its needle went still, pointing nowhere, pointing everywhere, pointing finally to rest. The first mate sailed north with the ship. She had her own coordinates now, written in the navigator's handwriting, pressed into her hand before he disappeared into the tree line. She never told anyone where she was going. 3 months later, a naval officer resigned his commission in Port Royal. He booked passage south. He was carrying a journal he hadn't written. The island with no name appears on no chart. The compass that pointed there went overboard in a storm off the Cape the following winter. 14 ships never came home. 14 ships never left. The sea keeps its own records. It doesn't share them. And somewhere south of the last coordinate any cartographer ever trusted, the water is a colour that has no name, and it is waiting.